Hey everyone, welcome to day 5, week 5. This is the last day of our look away week, and I think we've had an awesome week. Every single painting during the week feels a little bit different, and they're very inventive ways of looking at the same theme, but producing very, very different paintings. So for this last one, I'm going to do a self-portrait, but it's not going to be a very traditional self-portrait. It's going to be all about the way I compose and I cut off that portrait. So I think that's going to be super exciting. Remember, every single week we do very different themes. So next week it's going to be something totally different. So it's an invitation for you guys to just keep an eye on next week. And if you've missed videos from past weeks, because this is our second month, so you have a month worth of videos just to look at. Check them out. So thank you. I'll see you guys next week. Okay, let's get started. For this particular painting, I was using the watercolor paper, but I wanted to try. I honestly saw someone on Instagram just doing these really cool watercolors, and I thought they were like the Bert Silverman watercolor style where he paints on top of a layer of gouache, of white gouache, because it really felt like the puddles that you get in that watercolor on top of gouache were the same things that I was looking at. And I don't know if Bert Silverman did that first. I think David Levine might have done that also. But anyways, it was I'm pretty sure it was like a New York thing to do that. But I saw somebody doing these watercolors on Instagram, and they were saying they painted it on Yupo paper. And I was like, what's Yupo paper? And I saw some paper in Amazon, and I ordered it, and I was like, okay. And when I got it, I was like, okay, this is Mylar. This is Mylar. This is something that I've used before. And if you guys don't know, Mylar is basically a plastic. It's polypropylene, and it's very, very sturdy. It doesn't warp because it is a plastic. It's not absorbing anything. So the one risk that you have when painting on plastic is adherence, is basically your painting just peeling off the surface because it just really floats on top of the surface. That's about it. So what you try to do is to actually use mediums that have high adhesion. Oil is a great medium. It's probably the most beautiful vehicle to spread pigment, but it's terrible at adhering to surfaces. I don't know about you guys if you have like a lot of experiences with traditional painting, but if you, let's say, paint a layer of paint with a small quantity of oil, and you wait till that dries, and you try to put a layer of oil on top of that, as a second layer, oil beads up. Oil beats up naturally, and a lot of people get super scared and they're like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. It's like, no, that's oil does that because oil can spread paint beautifully, but it can't adhere to a surface. It's terrible, in terms of adhesion. It's terrible. That's why we use resins. That's why we use the most popular one is Damar varnish, and varnish is there, yes, as a final varnish to show all your colors in their glory and to protect your painting. And 200 years go by and it yellows like crazy and they have to clean it off, and then your painting doesn't look like anything that you painted, but who cares because you're dead. We use Damar varnish to help our oil actually stick to a surface. That's all it does. That's the most important thing varnish can do for paints as a medium. Nowadays we have tons of different mediums that can help us do that. And for example, liquid and other alkyd mediums, they actually have a really good adhesion. And that's what I use when I'm painting my paintings and I'm trying to make them dry super fast. If you are scared about these surfaces, the very, very slippery surfaces, you just have to know a couple of things. One is that your bristle brushes, they are great at grabbing a ton of paint from your palette and depositing a ton of paint on your surface. But eventually, if the surface doesn't have absorption, or if there's nothing, to grab the paint, if there's not any grit to your surface, then what is going to happen eventually, and a lot of people get frustrated by this, but that's just the nature of bristle brushes, is that a bristle brush will eventually pick up paint. you're going to start to put your brush strokes, and your brush strokes are going to eventually pick up earlier brush strokes you could put down. So you have to be very, very careful about that, because since paint is basically floating on these plastic surfaces, if you're using a lot of your bristle brushes, what you end up doing is just scratching the surface and lifting your first brush strokes. So you have to be very, very careful. You have to have a super, super soft hand when you're putting down paint. If you're scared about that, just use soft brushes. They can be soft synthetic ones like the ones I'm using. And I think I'm probably using a round brush here and there. Yeah, I think later on I'm going to use a round brush, a round natural soft brush. Like I'm not sure if it's a sable brush or, yeah, I think that one's a sable brush, because I have mongoose brushes too. I use them very, very sparingly. Those are very, very expensive. It's not that I don't use them because they are expensive. It's just that they are beautiful brushes, but those brushes are not going to be in production for many years now. There's so many restrictions, and they are so, so expensive to produce that it's not worth it. It's best if we just start to get used to other brushes, other synthetic brushes, other than natural brushes. If you don't like, materials that come from animal products, just know that stuff like any hide, any glue that we use when we're priming, it probably comes from animals. It comes from either fish or cow or rabbit. So it's rabbit skin glue or fish collagen or cow collagen. And in terms of our brushes, hog bristles come from hogs, and our natural brushes are usually sable or mongoose or ox hair or squirrel hair, badger. There's any little animal that has soft hair is probably used or has been used to make brushes. So just be conscious of that, and if that bothers you, get some synthetics. There's tons of synthetic brushes that are super, super good. In my case, that's the round sable that I'm using. So again, I need soft brushes to just let me build up my paint on this surface, because again, this surface is actually giving me no resistance. You could, if you wanted to, scuff the surface. You could take a sandpaper that has some grit to it and just really sand it. Sand your Mylar or your Yupo paper, whatever. You can get tons of, those are just brands, but you can get a lot of these sheets like very easily. So you create a texture, and if you create that texture, it's something akin to painting on metals. A lot of people paint on aluminum, for example. But aluminum, if you paint or copper, 400 years ago they painted miniatures on copper. It was very, very popular. But you have to scuff the surface. You don't have to do anything to it to prepare it, like in terms of priming, priming wise. But you have to just, even if it's the slightest indentations, you have to scuff it so that you can help paint actually grab onto it. Now, for example, Samori paints on metal so he can actually peel off the paint afterwards. And that's, those paintings are absolutely magical. And of course, they have a religious connotation. And because he's Italian, he's actually building on this Italian tradition of painting. But what he's doing is just a brilliant thing that is just 100% technical, which is painting on a surface that won't absorb paint. So the whole painting is just like this very subtle, fragile film of paint that he then just masterfully, honestly, kind of delaminates. And I mean, it sounds like it's just a thing, but when you see it, it's like, oh my God, this is incredible. This is absolutely incredible. And it's far more complicated than what I'm describing, but that's kind of what he does. So what I did here was actually prime it first, like quote unquote prime it. I gave it like a ground with acrylic. I wanted to see how well acrylic would grab onto the surface. And after it had dried, I actually sanded it down, and I took my fingernail and I started just scrubbing at it, trying to see if I would lift off paint easily. And I didn't. I mean, I could, if I really went at it, like I could, but honestly, that's every single painting in the world. If you really, really scratch the surface, you will get paint off. Like that's Come on, you don't have to be a genius to know that. So it's not fragile. It's not really this plastic. Yes, it's not absorbent, but it doesn't mean that it won't really hold your paint. But you have to help your paint. If you're just painting with oils, that's not going to do much. You're going to have to use some varnish to just make that painting stick to that surface. Or if you're using alkyd mediums, you can use some liquid like I do, just a little bit, and that's for sure gonna help it adhere. So on a technical kind of side note, because it is very, very important for you to know that different surfaces require you to paint differently, to adjust, and sometimes you have to adjust on the fly, and you can't just say, oh, this was so slippery that I don't paint this way, so I'm sorry, but I can't make a painting. Or, oh, this is so absorbent, let's say on a traditional gesso, a chalk gesso ground. It's super absorbent. It's very, very absorbent. And if that was happening, you have to adjust. You have to, understand your paint technically well enough so that you can say, okay, what do I have to do here so that I can actually, feel comfortable while I paint? And I actually love putting myself in situations where a surface is unknown to me. And while I'm painting, I have to adjust. Probably the toughest one that I've ever had to paint on was jute. And jute is just so coarse and the weave is so open that it was very, very tough. One painting, I ended up using the amount of paint that I use on 4 paintings. I'll stop right here and say I used tape for this because I wanted like a very, very sharp edge. And I usually do that with tape, or I take a ruler and then I put it at an angle and then I slide my brush so that it guides my brush stroke. But in here, I wanted a very, very clean, sharp edge because I wanted the separation between my head and the cabinet door. I wanted it to be strong. I wanted it to be super strong. And this, let me talk about the subject matter because I hadn't even started to talk about the subject matter. This is a little cabinet door that's in my mother's bathroom. This is actually like our bathroom. We were 5 kids in my house and we all used like one bathroom, one small bathroom. And the way we always refer to it was the blue bathroom. It has like, kind of like blue-green tiles. And my mother bathroom was always the yellow bathroom because her tiles are yellow. And the bathroom that was downstairs, which didn't have a shower, so who cared, was a green bathroom. So in my mind, it's always like that's the blue bathroom, and blue bathroom meant it was our bathroom. It was the kids' bathroom. So whenever I always go back to my mother's house, it's like, yeah, I never use my mother's bathroom. Like doesn't even cross my mind to just go into her room, which is just a couple of feet away from that bathroom, and use her bathroom. And this is the old cabinet door. It's the same door that I saw, my whole life growing up. And I love it. It's just this weird kind of wooden cabinet, and it has this iron handle, this round iron handle, and I've always liked it. I've always felt it's beautiful and horrible at the same time. And I was visiting my mother over the weekend, and I thought, well, this could be cool. This could actually be cool with, for what I'm doing. I want to paint myself, but during this week, it's not about really painting yourself. And I always enjoy my hairline. And the little bit of hair that I have up top, it just feels super soft. And I always love the redness that comes through my ear when there's light kind of shining through. So I push that cad red. It's almost like, and I actually thought this painting was just really fun because it is about me, but it's also about what I'm looking at in this cabinet, which coincidentally, it has like nothing. Has like a shower cap, and that's about it. I think like a toothbrush maybe, and that's it. But the fact that the head gets cut off just right there and so abruptly, I think it just gives you a heightened sense of curiosity of what there may be on the other side of this door. And because the cabinet is not expressed fully, it's just this vertical shape, this rectangle basically that is just occupying like about a third of the image plane. It's very abstract in a way. It's highly abstract. So I wanted it to have almost like that play that I was going for with Fer's painting yesterday, where you kind of bounce back and forth. Where I wanted yes, the back of my head to be kind of attractive, and the little fluffy, hair on the top of my head to be cool, and then my forehead just catching all that light, and yes, that ear. And there was a time during the painting that I was like, oh, I got to do this ear. I really have to kick ass and paint this ear like super, super well. And then I said, well, maybe the painting is not about that, because the thing that I was enjoying was taking all that blue green and dissolving it into my shirt. And that's probably my favorite part, like where it just comes in and out, and then suddenly shirt's collar is the one that appears, and then my neck just kind of thrusts forward. I mean, there's tension there. It's very subtle, but there's quite a bit of tension there. And then the collar just wraps around the back of my neck and then goes down. And I thought that was a perfect base for that portrait. But then I'm just kind of peeking in, and there's this curiosity. There's this, well, okay, what is that person? What is this person that's represented there, looking at? And the truth is, it's nothing. It's like emptiness. And I was hoping the viewer would just kind of, again, it's not probably as direct and as forceful as the one that Afer's engagement with herself was in yesterday's painting, where you just really bounce back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This is more like subtle, I feel. This is like, okay, this back of this head, it's going behind, because there is a sense of behind, and it's a very abstract sense of behind, because that door in that front plane just feels flat. It just feels weird. If it wasn't for that handle, it would just be this very, very strange, almost abstract rectangle. Those purples up there may be somewhat reminiscent of the bluish atmosphere that was surrounding it. And then you go down and you see that handle, and you just feel that, there's enough detail in there just to make it special, just to make it strangely mundane, but somewhat specific, and it makes it like there's a story to it. And my story is just very simple. It's just that this has accompanied me through my whole life, this little ugly wooden cabinet in the blue bathroom. Again, this was about questioning portraiture, the engagement within portraiture. So I hope you guys liked this week. Next week, something totally, totally different. So thank you. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.